Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. In this video I'd like to give you guys an update on my succulent and cacti collection here. So this sits normally on my windowsill in my living room because that's the sunniest position, and it's been doing moderately okay. I do have a few issues and I'll go over what the problems are, and because a lot of the cacti aren't growing as fast as they should be. But with the exception of the prickly pear cactus, which is this large one here, you can see that's actually grown too much. So I'm actually going to have to do a little bit of pruning on that to keep it in check. Also, it's hanging over quite a lot on the other side, particularly this one at the back here. And anyone who sits on my sofa is getting jabbed by the spines on that, so that stem definitely needs to go. Lower stem here also needs to go because it's starting to cover up and shade some of the other plants. So I'm just going to cut that now. So I'm just going to cut it right off at the base. And if I can, I'll use secateurs. If the stem is too wide, then I'm probably going to have to use a knife. I'll give it a try and cut it right at the bottom. So there we are, that's that one cut off. As you can see, it's quite a hefty one. I'll try and hold it without getting jabbed because these can easily quite go through these gloves. You see there, quite a thick stem at the bottom there, so there's quite a bit of growth from that. But you can see it's quite old and it's got a lot of kind of scar tissue starting to building up on that, so I'm not sure where that happened. You can see the top there is a bit greener. But anyway, it's an old stem and it's kind of getting a lot of bark on it, so it's not going to be giving a lot of energy back into the plant as through photosynthesis. It's really just becoming like a woody stem at the bottom, so that's a good one to take out. The second one is this one at the back. I'll just rotate it slightly so you can see a bit better. And it's basically, as you can see, it sticks out a long way, and anyone sitting on that side of the sofa is going to get prickled by it. So that one needs to come out as well. And I'll use the knife for that one, I think. So there we are. Cuts very easily, even though it's quite a mature plant, it's actually still not too woody. A lot of the cacti, they stay quite soft as they get older. As you can see again, there's quite a thick base at the bottom. And these can make nice cuttings, so I might make some new plants from these, and I might do a video of them later on. That's it anyway for what I'm doing on this main prickly pear. As you can see now, it's only got this main stem at the top here. These are all healthy growths. These are actually quite fresh and new, which is why they're still really nice and green there and they haven't got any of that bark appearing. The base down here though, they're the two sections that I cut off. They'll quickly callus over. There'll be any problem with infection in this flat. It's quite dry anyway, so I don't need to worry about infection or anything. And that will probably send up some new shoots, possibly from down here or from this pad here, and that'll just keep it growing for the next year. So the main problem I have with this cactus trough is actually there's too good a drainage, and the reason that's a problem is the drainage is really good and that's stopping this moisture from one part of the pot travelling to another part of the pot. So what seems to happen is the moisture kind of goes straight through when I water it to the bottom, and then a plant in that small area will pick it up and suck it up. But I think there's too many rocks and stones for it to really migrate sideways at all. So as I say, the great drainage gets the water straight down to the bottom of the container, but then there's not really enough water holding material to wick it either side to the other plants. So what I seem to get is some very dry patches, and so there's a few plants that are suffering. This echeveria here, for example, might be suffering from that, or it could be just because it's getting quite old, and echeverias are quite short-lived plants. Other plant that's suffered is this one at the end, the rat's tail cactus. That should be putting on loads of growth, but for some reason it's quite stunted. And this other small, tiny opuntia at the end here is also a bit stunted. But otherwise, it's all done quite well. The other plants are putting on a decent amount of growth. And the only casualty so far has been a small opuntia here, I reckon because it was too dry for it, to be honest. It's just shriveled up because, as I say, the water doesn't really travel very well within this pot. If I do it again, I'll probably actually put a less free draining mix. I'll probably put a lot more organic matter, maybe some compost or some peat. This is actually a compost. This is just the cactus mix that I put in with added grit for extra drainage, so it's really well drained, but as I say, probably a bit too well drained in the fact that the water doesn't spread along the pot. So the only other casualty is this plant at the very back, which is down here. So that shriveled up cactus at the back, it's a type of cactus where it's got mutation, so instead of the growth being round, it grows in kind of like a fan shape. And I think what's happened is it's kind of run out of growing stem. So what happens is it keeps growing, puts out these weird fan shaped bits, but then it just kind of seems to stop growing, and then the whole thing is just kind of died. I think it could be to do with the mutation that it's got, the fan shape. I'm not too sure. As you can see, it's completely dead, so I need to remove this, and that will give me space to put in either a new plant or to allow the other plants to grow and fill that space. So the other bit of work I need to do on this side of the trough is this Aloe vera variegata here. As you can see, it's getting quite top heavy. Some of the lower leaves are dying off, and it does actually have a new baby one coming from a sucker, so that's quite good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the old dead leaves. Now, depending how the leaves are, I can either do this by carefully pulling them off, or I might need to actually cut them. So if they come off naturally by a gentle pulling, then I'll do that. But otherwise I'll cut them off just so the appearance is a little bit nicer on the plant. It's not really anything detrimental to the plant having some old dead leaves in the bottom here, but it simply doesn't look very nice, and also any of the surrounding plants are going to be a little bit shaded. What I have noticed whilst doing this is it's very loose at the base. That's got me wondering if the roots have maybe rotted off or something's happened. So I'm going to pull it up gently, see if it does come out, and see what the problem is there. So here we are. Seems to be completely dead at the base. Not any real sign of rot though. It's not soft or anything, so that's quite unusual. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut the end off to a point of fresh growth. So there again, it looks a little bit infected, so I'll cut back a little bit further. A bit more so. Still a tiny bit of infection in there, so I'm just going to go a tiny bit further back. I have to take off some of these lower leaves first in order to do that. So unfortunately there is some kind of infection here, and it has spread quite far up. You can see that there's still a bit of browning on the stem there. So that's something I really need to cut back to get rid of any of that infection. But if this does die, I'm not too bothered. There's a nice new plant coming up there. So there we are, that seems to be the most of the infection gone. So what I'm going to do now is allow this to dry out. When that dries out, it will callus over, and any kind of infection will hopefully heal up. Then what I'll do is, once it's calloused, I'll maybe remove one or two of the lower leaves, put it in some soil and get that to root again, and that will be a new plant ready to pot up. So at the moment there's quite a space in this part of the trough for now, but I'm going to leave that. I'm not going to bother putting any new plants in, because I want to see if these remaining plants will actually grow and fill that space before I start planting out with more cacti. I do have a couple of cacti which I can put in here should I need to, but for now I'm just going to leave it as it is. So as you can see, this is a small Aloe vera variegata down there. It's got very plump leaves, it's doing very well, it's very healthy, and it's had a decent amount of growth. So I'm going to leave that one there. I think that'll fill in that gap quite nicely where its mother plant was taken out. So further along, there's the echeveria that needs a little bit of work as well. So the echeveria here is really getting to the end of its life. Echeverias don't really live for very long, and there's a lot of old dead leaves. So I'm going to pull off a lot of these dead leaves, and to be honest, I might find out that the stem might break off at the base, and this might be a goner. As you can see, there's very little growth at the top here, and it's really not been doing well for the last year really. The first couple of years it grew great, loads of leaves, looked very nice. But as I say, when echeverias start to get leggy like this, they really get to the end of their life. And it's one of the succulents that does have quite a short life span. So that's most of the dead leaves off now. You can see echeverias don't normally have a kind of little palm tree kind of appearance with a stem like that. That's just because this is quite an old one. I think this is about 3 or 4 years old. This one just on the right is a good example of what it looks like when it's younger. As you can see, there's no real stem, and it's just a nice flat with loads of leaves. And this was actually even bigger than this one. Whereas at its prime it looked pretty good. So I'll leave that one, see how it does, but I have a feeling I'll probably have to replace this one soon. It's not doing too well. What I might try doing, if it does continue to deteriorate, is cut it off further down, and I'll actually plant the stem deeper down, kind of like a cutting. That might rejuvenate it and bring it back to life a little bit, because that will kind of reset the clock. It won't have the long stem, and it'll grow new roots, so it'll be a bit more like a young plant or a cutting. So that's all for now. As you can see, there's a lot more space now, a lot less dead material. This Aloe vera variegata, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and make a cutting from it. So I'll try and give you guys an update of that, maybe in a few months' time when it's started to get ready for it. Once it's calloused over, and I can then put it in the soil. So otherwise, I'm going to leave this as it is. I'm quite happy with it for now, but I do think I'm going to have to do a major overhaul soon. I'd like to kind of rearrange this area. These cacti are growing quite a bit and they're getting a really bit too cramped now. Over here, as you can see, there's a lot of space, so I could kind of move these over to fill that space. And the other thing is I really want to change the growing medium. As I said before, it's too free draining, the water's not travelling throughout the pot, so some plants are getting loads of water, some are getting none at all. So some are doing really well, like this aloe down here, and other ones, such as the echeveria, or even the other smaller punty at the back there, are kind of struggling a little bit. Plus there has been a few mealybugs. I think I've got rid of most of the mealybugs. I can't really see any living ones. There are, you can probably see a few white specks, which are the old egg sacs from the mealybug, but there's certainly no living mealybug in this trough at the moment, but I'll just have to keep an eye on it, make sure they don't come back. So that's it for now. I'll give you guys another update probably in a few weeks time, and as I say, what I'd really like to do eventually is give this a big overhaul, get some nice new growing medium.